Hey there, y'all. This is David Taylor 2. You know me as DT2 Comics Chat on Twitter. This is my review of Star Trek Picard, Episode 1, Remembrance. Now, I've been thinking for a while that I wanted to review this show, but I wasn't sure. But the reason I'm reviewing it is because it makes me so angry. So I figured I needed to say what I was thinking about it in a review. The first thing I want to say is that this ain't your daddy's Star Trek, and this ain't your daddy's Picard. Now, some people have said over and over and over again that some hardcore Trekkies or hardcore fans are against change, but that doesn't make any sense because it is impossible to recreate anything exactly as it was. And if you had something that we call lightning in a bottle, and that's an old school phrase that means the chemistry and the timing and the lighting and the costuming, every area of the production was on point. And it created something golden. It created something wonderful. That's what we call lightning in a bottle. And that doesn't happen all that often. Don't you think that if something like that was predictable or creatable, that people would make shows like that every time, but they don't? So Star Trek has always been one of those franchises where it is just so unlikely to be the success that it is, but it has been from the beginning. And I want to throw in that the original series embraced diversity and whatever else you want to call it, inclusion, before it was even a thing, because that was way back in the 60s, so I'm not trying to hear it like these are new ideas. But anyway, so I said all that to say that I personally am not against Picard changing. He would have to change because this is set about 20 years after Star Trek Nemesis. So Data has been dead for 20 years, and Picard has retired for reasons that we will see in this episode. I don't expect him to be the same man, okay? Because in the show, he's like 92. So that means in the show, he was like 72 when Data died and all this happened, and Patrick Stewart is 79. I do not expect Picard to be the same man. Let me repeat that. I don't expect him to be the same man. However, you don't completely change your personality and your motivations and your perspectives and your convictions over the course in your life. You can change some things, no doubt, no argument there. But very few people do a 180 on their values and their convictions and their personality and their perspective. And sometimes that's exactly what this feels like. We saw the beginning of this Picard in the movies, because in the show, in The Next Generation, when Journey's End was broadcast, we saw Picard standing for what the Federation was trying to do, even understanding the pain it was going to cause the natives of the planet. In Insurrection, we saw Picard flip, and Picard sided with the natives against the Federation. So everybody knows that movie Picard was not TV Picard, so we already saw our first changes there. But this Picard, I'm still trying to figure out if he knows who he is. Follow what I'm saying? So we find out during the episode that he quit Starfleet because he said it was no longer Starfleet. It no longer stood for principles and not, as he said, not Romulan lives. It no longer stood for what he thought it should stand for. But I want to remind you that in Generations, First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis, he did some things that were against Starfleet regulations. He did some things that endangered lives. He did some things that were motivated by his own emotions, his own whatever. We saw that in particular with First Contact, and we see it later in this series also when he's dealing with the Borg. So it's not like he's objective about everything, but he got so mad at Starfleet for refusing to save the Romulans after the destruction of their sun until he had mounted a rescue effort, and then Starfleet just pulls out. The reason the Starfleet pulls out is because there is a simultaneous insurrection by what they call the Synths on Mars, and they destroy Utopia Planitia, which was the shipyard of Starfleet. That's where they made all the starships. Okay, nothing about that makes any sense. Okay, is it Federation-wide? Do you understand how big the Federation is, how many planets it encompasses? Are they saying that all of the synthetic beings across the entire expanse of the Federation mutinied at the same time? Because if that is the case, that would be a civil war that would have destroyed the Federation or brought it down, or they would still be embroiled in that war. So was this localized to Mars? Was it just those synths? Because they say in the show that synthetics or AI has been banned. It's been banned Federation-wide. Okay? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. The scope of that idea is not realized properly based on what they're saying. If all of the synthetic beings mutinied at the same time on the same day in the same way, there's no way the Federation would still be standing or not severely crippled. Now, if they wanted to use that as a larger plot, that would be a good idea. But, like if Lor's still out there somewhere and he finally came up with a scheme to get him what he's always wanted, But anyway. So the other things you will find in Star Trek Picard, you will find the foundational themes. One of the foundational themes you're going to find is that there is some woman that's scolding him, belittling him, cursing him out in every episode. Jean-Luc Picard would be revered. He is one of the greatest captains in all of Starfleet history, probably the second greatest behind Kirk, or some might even consider him the greatest. He's certainly the greatest of his generation. And he certainly navigated the Enterprise through, more than their fair share of extreme adventures. This man would be revered, okay? This man would be a legend, but instead, every woman that he encounters on every level, except for Daj, I believe, curses him out, belittles him, disrespects him, acts like he's nothing, acts like he needs to be scolded like a child. And even worse, he just stands there and takes it. He just holds his head down, and this is pure white man apology tour. This is purely a reflection of our current 2020 cultural war that says that Caucasian men have to apologize all the time in all cases for all things, and they're wrong just because they're white men. And that is just incorrect, and that is an improper perspective, but that seems to be part of the zeitgeist now, and so they have written Picard in that way, which makes no sense. Another thing that they do is they have something out there now called Short Trek, and basically, and Star Wars is doing the same thing. Basically, it's like backstory or side story, a whole bunch of stuff that you have to read to kind of understand everything that's going on. And people that watch TV shows, now I don't think there's anything wrong with that with books, if your series is a book series, but people that watch TV shows and movies don't really want to have to read all this extraneous material. They want that to be explained. It doesn't have to be explained all at once, but it needs to be explained and justified. What did I just say? Explained and justified inside of the show itself. Okay? Everything about that is what TV and movie audiences want. And so, if you don't read the Children of Mars thing, you won't understand all of what's going on. And so the Romulans, tens of thousands died in that attack with the Romulans, but also on Mars at the shipyard. And so, and they give you this idea that Romulans have always hated synthetics. Really? I don't really recall that being a part of their culture and seeing them in TNG or Deep Space Nine or Voyager. But okay, and so then we're introduced to Dr. Agnes Jurati, who I don't like her. I haven't liked her from the moment I saw her, from the moment she opened her mouth, and every time I'm on Twitter, I call her Diet Kristen Bell. I do not buy anything she says. Every word out of her mouth is a lie. Okay? So just putting that out there. Also, I wanted to say, I don't think I said it earlier, every clue that you need about how this series is going to go is actually in the opening credits. I maintain, remember at the end, there's at the beginning, the little Star Trek thing breaks up into leaves and flakes, and at the end there are little flakes and parcels coming into Picard's skin, into his head. I maintain that this Picard may not even be the real Picard. He may be a clone or he may be a version of Locutus. He may be something. He may not actually be Picard. And I think they're telling us that in the opening credits, just putting that out there. But anyway, don't like Girardi. She drops the name of Bruce Maddox, who was the guy in The Measure of Man who wanted to ban synthetics at that point. And they had to defend Data's right to live as a sentient life form, even though he was not flesh and blood. They've kind of turned that idea on its ear, however, with this new stuff. But I'll get to that a little bit later. So, long story short, Picard's having dreams which don't make any sense, and they're dreams of Data, which don't make any sense. And he sees Data's surprise. Data had more daughters. It's really funny because the synthetic man had more children than everybody else. Worf had one kid. Beverly had one kid. Troy had a surprise kid. But Data's got 3 and counting. I know some people will count Geordi's kids with Leia, but I'm not sure if the ending of All Good Things is canon. But anyway, so Data not only made Law in TNG, but he didn't, that's in the episode of The Offspring, but he continued with that, and now he's come up with twins. Now, the whole scientific premise of this, I call bantha poodoo on it. I call chicken crap. It's so ridiculous. It's cloning of an android brain, cloning of a positronic net based on a single cell. I have no idea how that would work. Is Data's brain made up of circuits and plastic and wires and plastisteel, some type of metals, any other type of conductive materials? What is it made out of? Because how could you clone a whole nother brain for that? It's not the same as flesh. And I don't care if you're, 400 centuries away, you can't get flesh out of steel, and you can't get steel out of flesh. What a human brain can do is conduct electrical impulses through our nervous system. We know that. But remember that Data even asked the Borg Queen, how does she solve some of the problems in terms of integrating flesh and synthetics? And remember that combining flesh and synthetics were her specialty. You remember that? That's literally all the Borg Queen did was assimilate species across thousands of worlds, combining whatever their base type was with synthetic, what she called enhancements and improvements, moving towards perfection. But of course, that's subjective. So I reject categorically the entire idea, the premise that you can clone Data's positronic net from one of his single cells. That doesn't make any sense. Dr. Soong, his creator, has been the only one shown to have mastered enough of the technology to create Data and lore in B4. Okay, remember, again, even Data himself couldn't do it, although I would buy his experiments becoming more sophisticated as he grew. But I still do not buy the idea of being able to clone anything like Data, an entire positronic net, from a single cell of that net, and then also to turn that clone into full flesh and blood. So now it is somehow an integrated positronic net and a human brain. And on top of all that, surprise, surprise, Dodge is a Mary Sue, can just activate, kill everything in sight, super leaps, super strength, super speed, super martial arts, okay, whatever. So, and I also want you to notice that she does not have a personality. She has a function. That's how you know she's a Mary Sue. She does stuff. You can't describe who she is. I dare you. I dare you to try to describe her personality. Right, because she doesn't have one. So, we see her kicking all kinds of behind until she doesn't for whatever reason. They decided to show some Romulans beaming in, and Romulans have some acidic poison in a secret tooth, because this is the Tal Shiar, the Romulan Secret Service, or the Romulan Black Ops division, if you will. So they have some acidic compound in a secret tooth that they bite and spit, and somehow they bite and spit that, and that destroys Dodge. And I'm saying to myself, if y'all could do that, why didn't you do that the first time when you first beamed in? If you can beam anywhere where she is, why don't you just beam her out? Why would you have to beam, people in to try to assail her and all that? So I'm just calling chicken crap on all of this because it doesn't make any sense. But anyway, so before she is derezzed, she meets Picard. And of course, Picard instantly trusts her, instantly accepts her, instantly bonds with her, and then instantly seems to have some type of emotional empathy with her. And on the one hand, if he does believe that is Data's daughter, I can see how he would be open. But on the other hand, his Starfleet captain instincts should have told him, you need to find out a little bit more about who this is before you just welcome her in your home. And I also want you to notice that Daj just shows up on the ranch, Chateau Picard. Does he have any security? Does he have any alarms? And she's within 20 feet of him kind of instantly. Did she beam in? Did she run over? What happened? Does he have any security? So they're just putting the scenes together, just trying to make stuff happen. And I can tell when something is written just because they wanted certain scenes included, as opposed to if there's a coherent narrative. Okay? So long story short, then, Picard finds out about everything that's going on in terms of Daj, and finds out that there's another twin out there. That twin is named Soji. I like the way Anna, that Star Wars girl, says it, Thing 1 and Thing 2. I really like that. So credit to Anna. We always know more than the characters know. You discover as these episodes go on. We always know more than they do. We always know more than they do. We always know more than they do. They do. I'm sorry, I'm not pronouncing correctly. And then we also meet Soji through the eyes of Narek, a Romulan that I just don't even understand. I don't like him either, and I don't understand why she does. But anyway, they seem to bond and connect right away, and he flirts with her, and they're just like, it's just so instant. And I'm like, whatever. So the big reveal, of course, is at the end that the reclamation site is actually a so-called broken Borg cube, but it is not a completely broken Borg cube because Borg are still on it. So the line that they're selling you is that because it is disconnected from the collective proper, the hive mind, and because it is considered, I guess, damaged goods or battered goods, because in TNG the Borg would come collect certain technology from drones, and then the drones would disappear and the Borg would beam out. But now they're saying that because they're disconnected, they're not really a threat, but they're still active and they won't bother you and a whole bunch of things. And I'm telling you one thing, I would not be working on a Borg cube of any kind. Okay? You don't fully understand the technology. I don't believe for a second that the Borg are unaware of that ship and that there are not sleeper agents. Everybody that's into science fiction knows that that cube is a sleeper agent for somebody. The Borg, the Romulans, somebody. There's all kinds of theories as to who as to who Soji really is. I'll get into those a little bit later. But one way or another, we already know that cube's coming alive against the protagonist at some point. And, everybody in a sci-fi show or movie has obviously never seen a sci-fi show or movie because they don't get what's happening, but we do. But I want you to remember that we are 10 steps ahead of everybody in this show all the time. So that's maybe not a bad vantage point, but I mean, it's just a lot of hurry up and waiting. It's a lot of hurry up and waiting for the characters to catch up to where we are. So all in all, I think in this first episode, they established that this is going to be very different than what you expected. And Patrick Stewart has gone on record saying that was his goal, not to repeat his performances in TNG. But remember, this is a completely different kind of man. And I just don't agree with the kind of man he would have grown into during this time. And I don't agree with all of the foolish emotional decisions he makes. And, I don't agree with all the details that are just kind of glossed over to make the story work. And you know how I feel about Mary Sue's. I just know. Can't stand them. So, it doesn't have to be like what we call the Roddenberry era or the Berman era. It doesn't have to be classic Trek or Next Generation era Trek. But it does need to be a cohesive well thought out, well written story that honors the mythos that it's built on. That is unfortunately one of the common threads of 2020, that the people that are currently running franchises have no respect for the mythos, the history, and the lore that it's built on. They throw it out, they violate it, they laugh at it, they laugh at us fans. They troll us on purpose. I don't understand that kind of mean-spirited attitude. But so many people that hate franchises and hate its fans have taken over the reins. So that is evident here as far as I'm concerned with Picard, because not to be insensitive, it's possible that Patrick Stewart is a little too old to pull this off. But what I mean by that is I would have preferred to have seen him in a more dignified role than maybe trying to run around the galaxy like he did when he was young, or sometimes he looks like he's struggling in the scenes, or a whole bunch of things, and it's very difficult to watch because he's older and it doesn't look like he has, his same strength or whatever, and that's hard to watch, and that's not really something I think we needed to see. It's not something I wanted to see, and I'm not trying to be discriminatory against older people, because if you live long enough, you become one of them. So I'm certainly not talking against the elderly. I'm saying I don't know if that was the best frame for this particular show. If he had been, I had so many ideas, I won't share them because I might write a Star Trek book one day, so I won't give away all my ideas, but I had so many more ideas about how they could have pulled this off and maintained both Patrick and Jean-Luc's dignity in that process. And I don't necessarily really think that this does it. But, he, and the way Starfleet treats him, doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, so that's episode 1. Leave your comments below. I want to hear your thoughts. Please comment, like, share, and subscribe, because the more you comment, like, share, and subscribe, the more I can keep bringing you some good content. Okay? Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.